The year was 1603. In the corridors of Richmond Palace, courtiers held perfumed handkerchiefs to their faces. The smell was overwhelming. Queen Elizabeth I, the woman who had ruled England for 45 years, was rotting alive. Her teeth had turned black and crumbled in her mouth. Thick white paint covered her face in layers so heavy that servants whispered it looked like a death mask. When she spoke, the stench of decay escaped from between her lips. This was the Virgin Queen, the woman who defeated the Spanish Armada, the monarch who made England a world power. But she couldn't defeat what was consuming her from within. For decades, Elizabeth had hidden a horrifying secret. Her body was being destroyed by the very things that made her appear powerful. The makeup that gave her porcelain skin was poisoning her. The sugar that sweetened her meals was rotting her from the inside. The image of perfection she projected was killing her. Tonight, you'll discover the medical nightmare that was Elizabeth's body, the toxic chemicals that ate through her flesh, the diseases she concealed from her subjects, and the gruesome reality of what it meant to be the Virgin Queen. This is the story history doesn't want you to know. The story of how absolute power absolutely corrupted not just her soul, but her flesh. What you're about to learn will forever change how you see the golden age of England. Every morning at dawn, Elizabeth's ladies-in-waiting would begin a ritual that would slowly kill their queen. They mixed white lead with vinegar, creating a paste called ceruse. This deadly concoction would be spread across Elizabeth's face in thick, unnatural layers. The lead gave her skin an otherworldly white glow, the fashion of the time. What her courtiers didn't know was that lead was seeping into her bloodstream with every application. Elizabeth had contracted smallpox at age 29. The disease left her face scarred and pitted. For the next 40 years, she would hide these marks under increasingly heavy layers of toxic paint. Each day, the lead ate away at her skin. Each day, she applied more to cover the damage. Foreign ambassadors would return to their courts with disturbing reports. The French envoy wrote to King Henri IV, "Her Majesty's face appears more like a painted statue than living flesh." But it was Elizabeth's mouth that told the real story of her decay. She had developed an addiction to sugar, a luxury that only royalty could afford. Marchpane sweets, candied fruits, honey cakes, Elizabeth consumed them constantly. Tudor England had no understanding of dental care. Teeth were cleaned with rough cloths, if at all. The result was catastrophic. By her 40s, Elizabeth's teeth had turned completely black. Several had rotted away entirely. When she spoke, courtiers could smell the putrid stench of decay escaping from her mouth. This is why Elizabeth never smiled in public. Every portrait, every public appearance, her lips remained tightly sealed. She had trained herself to speak without opening her mouth wide. The image of the radiant queen was maintained through careful deception. The Spanish ambassador, Count de Feria, wrote in a secret dispatch, "The queen's breath is so foul that one must stand at considerable distance when she speaks." But Elizabeth's vanity would destroy more than just her teeth. The lead paint that whitened her face also caused her hair to fall out in clumps. By her 50s, Queen Elizabeth was almost completely bald. She owned over 80 elaborate red wigs, each one designed to recreate the flowing hair of her youth. Underneath these wigs, her scalp was diseased. Patches of raw, weeping skin covered her head. The lead had eaten through her hair follicles, leaving permanent damage. Her ladies-in-waiting would douse her wigs in perfume to mask the smell of her rotting scalp. The Venetian ambassador reported, "Her Majesty requires such quantities of perfume that the very air around her throne becomes thick with artificial scent." Every element of Elizabeth's legendary beauty was a carefully constructed lie. The porcelain skin, the radiant smile, the flowing red hair, all of it was fake, and all of it was slowly killing her. While Elizabeth hid her decay from her subjects, I'm exposing the truth to you right now, completely free. If 10,000 people can watch this shocking revelation, surely 3,000 can hit subscribe? Or are you really just here to consume without contributing anything back? Drop a comment and tell me why you won't subscribe. I'm genuinely curious what stops you. Elizabeth Tudor died a virgin at age 69, or so history tells us. But her own doctors suspected something far more disturbing about the Virgin Queen's body. In 1559, 26-year-old Elizabeth fell violently ill. Her physicians were summoned for an intimate examination. What they discovered left them speechless. The Venetian ambassador wrote in an encrypted message, "The Queen's physicians whisper of abnormalities that make marriage impossible." Elizabeth's refusal to marry wasn't just political strategy. Medical evidence suggests she may have suffered from a condition that made normal sexual relations physically impossible. Some historians theorize she had an intersex condition, neither fully male nor female. Others point to severe reproductive abnormalities that would have prevented her from bearing children. Dr. John Dee, her personal physician, kept detailed notes about the Queen's monthly afflictions. These records, discovered centuries later, reveal that Elizabeth's menstrual cycle was erratic and extremely painful. For months at a time, it would stop entirely. When it returned, she would be bedridden for days, screaming in agony. But the most disturbing evidence of Elizabeth's medical condition came in the form of phantom pregnancies. In 1554, before she became queen, Elizabeth's belly began to swell. Court physicians confirmed she was with child. Preparations were made for the royal birth. Cradles were ordered. Wet nurses were hired. No baby ever came. This would happen again in 1560, then again in 1566. Each time, Elizabeth's abdomen would expand as if she carried a child. Each time, the pregnancy would mysteriously vanish. Modern medical analysis suggests these episodes were caused by large ovarian cysts or possibly tumors growing inside her reproductive organs. The physician William Cecil wrote in his private journal, "Her Majesty's body deceives even herself. The swelling comes and goes like the tide, but brings forth only air." Elizabeth's own ladies-in-waiting reported that during these phantom pregnancies, the Queen would talk to her unborn children. She would place her hands on her swollen belly and sing lullabies. When the swelling disappeared, she would lock herself in her chambers for weeks, refusing to see anyone. The French ambassador, Michel de Castelnau, documented one of these episodes. The Queen appeared with child for 7 months. The royal nursery was prepared. Then one morning her belly was flat again. No explanation was given. The nursery was sealed shut. By her 40s, Elizabeth's reproductive system had become a source of constant pain. Court records show regular payments to apothecaries for medicines for the Queen's private sufferings. These likely included opium-based painkillers to help her endure what her doctors described as torments of the womb. But the most shocking evidence comes from a secret report written by her chief physician, Dr. Rodrigo Lopez. In this document, discovered in Spanish archives, Lopez describes examining the Queen's body. Her Majesty's feminine parts are not as nature intended. There are growths and malformations that would make childbirth impossible, perhaps even fatal. This report was written just 2 years before Lopez was executed for allegedly trying to poison the Queen. Many historians now believe he was killed not for treason, but because he knew too much about Elizabeth's medical secrets. The truth about Elizabeth's body was so shocking that when she died, her ministers refused to allow an autopsy. Her corpse was embalmed immediately and sealed in its coffin. The medical secrets she had guarded for 70 years were buried with her. What exactly was Elizabeth hiding? What abnormalities did her doctors discover? The answers died with her. But the evidence suggests the Virgin Queen's body was far from normal. Elizabeth guarded these medical secrets for 4 centuries. I'm revealing them to you right now for free. If this forbidden knowledge is worth your time to watch, surely it's worth 1 click to subscribe. Don't be the viewer who takes everything and gives nothing back. Hit that subscribe button, or at least have the honesty to tell us in the comments why you refuse to support the truth. Every morning for 40 years, Elizabeth Tudor painted her face with poison. The ceruse makeup that gave her that famous white complexion contained massive amounts of lead. By modern standards, Elizabeth was applying lethal doses of toxic metal to her skin daily. Over decades, this lead seeped through her pores and into her bloodstream. Lead poisoning doesn't kill quickly. It destroys the mind first. By her 50s, Elizabeth had become famous for violent, unpredictable rages. She would scream at her courtiers for hours, throw objects across rooms, and make erratic decisions that baffled her advisors. The Spanish ambassador wrote, "The Queen's temperament has become as changeable as English weather, but far more dangerous. Modern medical science knows that lead poisoning causes severe neurological damage. Paranoia, mood swings, violent outbursts, memory loss. Elizabeth exhibited every symptom. Her courtiers attributed these episodes to the stress of ruling. They had no idea their queen was slowly going insane from metal toxicity. But lead wasn't the only poison coursing through Elizabeth's veins. In 1572, Elizabeth fell mysteriously ill with symptoms that her doctors couldn't explain. High fever, painful sores, and a distinctive rash that appeared across her body. The court physicians whispered among themselves about venereal disease. Their solution was mercury. Mercury was the standard treatment for syphilis in Tudor England. Patients would be rubbed with mercury ointments, forced to inhale mercury vapors, and given mercury pills to swallow. The treatment was often deadlier than the disease itself. Dr. Gilbert's medical notes, discovered in the British Library, describe administering mercury treatments to Her Majesty's secret affliction multiple times between 1572 and 1580. These treatments were conducted in absolute secrecy, with only Elizabeth's most trusted ladies-in-waiting present. Mercury poisoning causes tremors, tooth loss, and neurological damage. It also turns the gums black and causes teeth to fall out. This explains why Elizabeth's dental problems accelerated dramatically in her 40s, just after these secret mercury treatments began. The Venetian ambassador reported in 1575, "The Queen's hands shake when she believes herself unobserved. Her ladies must help her hold a cup steady when she drinks." But the most horrifying evidence of Elizabeth's poisoning was literally written on her skin. Underneath her thick white makeup, Elizabeth's face was a landscape of scars and lesions. The lead-based ceruse, mixed with the heavy metal jewelry pressed against her skin, created chemical burns that never healed. Her ladies-in-waiting reported that removing the Queen's makeup each night revealed raw, weeping wounds across her cheeks and forehead. Elizabeth's personal seamstress, Agnes Strickland, left detailed accounts of the Queen's skin condition. Her Majesty's flesh beneath the paint appears as if burned by fire. There are holes eaten into her very face, which must be filled with paste before the white paint can be applied. These weren't ordinary cosmetic reactions. The combination of lead makeup, mercury treatments, and metallic accessories was literally eating through Elizabeth's skin. Each day, she would cover yesterday's chemical burns with fresh poison, creating new wounds while hiding the old ones. This is why Elizabeth never allowed herself to be seen without makeup. Not even by her closest servants. She would wake before dawn to apply her poisonous mask, and she wouldn't remove it until after her ladies had extinguished all candles at night. The Earl of Leicester, her closest companion, wrote in his private diary, "I have known Her Majesty for 30 years, yet I have never seen her true face. Sometimes I wonder if there is anything left beneath the paint." By 1590, the damage was irreversible. Court records show payments for increasingly expensive cosmetics, not for beauty, but to hide the destruction the previous cosmetics had caused. Elizabeth was trapped in a cycle of chemical self-destruction that she couldn't escape. The woman who ruled the most powerful nation on earth was slowly dissolving from the inside out. While Elizabeth poisoned herself daily for vanity, you can support the truth with a single click, completely free. Statistics show 70% of viewers watch without subscribing. Are you really going to be part of that selfish majority? Or will you prove you actually value real history by hitting that subscribe button? The choice reveals more about you than you think. January 1603. After 45 years on the throne, Elizabeth's body finally surrendered to decades of self-inflicted poison. The smell hit visitors before they even entered her presence chamber. Sir John Harrington, Elizabeth's godson, described his final audience with the Queen. "Her Majesty's condition is most pitiable. The air around her person is thick with a stench so foul that courtiers must breathe through their sleeves. Yet none dare speak of it. Elizabeth could no longer hide what she had become. The lead paint that had preserved her image for decades now cracked and peeled from her face like old plaster. Underneath, her skin was black with decay. Pus seeped from open sores that the makeup could no longer cover. Her teeth, already blackened and broken, had begun to abscess. Infection spread through her jaw and into her bloodstream. The pain was so severe that she could barely speak. When she did, witnesses reported that the smell from her mouth was overwhelming. Lady Southwell, one of Elizabeth's ladies-in-waiting, wrote in her private journal, "Her Majesty has not looked upon her reflection in many months. All mirrors have been removed from her chambers by her own command. When she glimpses herself in polished metal, she weeps." Elizabeth's advisors knew they faced a crisis. If foreign powers discovered the true state of England's monarch, the kingdom would be seen as vulnerable. A massive deception was launched to hide Elizabeth's condition from the world. Official court bulletins continued to describe the Queen as in good health and high spirits. Foreign ambassadors were given carefully staged audiences where Elizabeth, propped up by cushions and hidden behind layers of fresh makeup, would make brief appearances before being quickly escorted away. But the deception was crumbling. The French ambassador, André Hurault de Metz, managed to get close enough to Elizabeth during a formal ceremony to observe her condition. His secret report to King Henri IV was devastating. The Queen of England resembles nothing so much as a walking corpse. Her face is painted so thick that pieces fall from it when she moves. The smell of death clings to her person. Even more damning was a report from the papal nuncio. Her Majesty's condition is so revolting that her own ladies struggle not to retch in her presence. The myth of the glorious Queen dies with every breath she takes. By March 1603, Elizabeth was dying from multiple organ failure caused by decades of lead poisoning. Her kidneys were shutting down. Her heart was irregular and weak. But it was the massive infection in her jaw that finally killed her. The dental abscesses had spread through her bloodstream, causing sepsis. Dr. William Harvey, one of England's leading physicians, was called to examine the Queen. His private notes, discovered centuries later, describe her final condition. Her Majesty's body is consumed by corruption. The infection from her rotted teeth has poisoned her blood. Death is inevitable and merciful. Elizabeth refused all food in her final weeks. Her throat was so swollen from infection that she could barely swallow. She spent her last days propped up in a chair, too weak to lie down, gasping for breath through her ruined mouth. On March 24, 1603, Queen Elizabeth I died at Richmond Palace. She was 69 years old. Within hours, her body was wrapped in cerements and rushed to be embalmed. No autopsy was performed. No physician was allowed to examine her corpse. The true cause of her death was buried with her. Her ministers immediately began rewriting history. Official accounts described her peaceful death, surrounded by loving courtiers. The reality, a queen rotting alive from vanity and poison, was erased from all records. Documents describing Elizabeth's final months were collected and destroyed. Witnesses were sworn to secrecy. The horrible truth about the Virgin Queen's death became one of England's most closely guarded state secrets. For 400 years, historians have repeated the sanitized version of Elizabeth's death. The image of the glorious Queen, dying peacefully after a golden reign, became the accepted truth. But the real Elizabeth, diseased, rotting, and consumed by the very vanity that made her famous, was hidden from history. Elizabeth's courtiers spent months lying to protect her reputation. I'm risking YouTube's algorithm to expose the truth they buried. If you can't hit subscribe after learning these forbidden secrets that took me weeks to research, at least have the integrity to tell us why in the comments. What exactly is your excuse for taking this content without giving anything back? The Elizabeth you know never existed. For 4 centuries, a carefully crafted myth has replaced the rotting reality of England's most famous queen. The woman you learned about in school. Radiant, powerful, eternally beautiful, was a Victorian invention designed to hide one of history's most grotesque medical disasters. In 1837, 18-year-old Princess Victoria ascended to the throne. Her advisors needed a role model for female power, someone to legitimize a young woman ruling an empire. They found their answer in Elizabeth Tudor, but first, they had to completely reinvent her. Victorian historians systematically destroyed evidence of Elizabeth's physical decay. Medical accounts were dismissed as unseemly gossip. Witness testimonies about her stench and disease were labeled undignified speculation. By 1870, the official history presented Elizabeth as a flawless icon of female leadership. This sanitized version became the foundation for everything that followed. Shakespeare's plays, painted centuries after Elizabeth's death, show a beautiful queen with perfect skin and gleaming teeth. Hollywood films like Elizabeth, starring Cate Blanchett, present a stunning monarch who glows with health and vitality. None of it is real. All of it is propaganda. But Elizabeth wasn't the only royal whose medical horrors were erased from history. King Louis XIV of France, the Sun King, suffered from anal fistulas so severe that courtiers could smell him from across vast palace rooms. His medical records, hidden for centuries, describe surgical procedures performed without anesthesia while he continued holding court. King George III madness was actually acute lead poisoning from his medicines and cosmetics. Like Elizabeth, he was slowly driven insane by the very treatments meant to preserve his royal image. Catherine the Great of Russia died from a stroke brought on by massive constipation. She hadn't defecated properly in over a week due to her obsession with maintaining a tiny waist through extreme corsetry. Each of these medical disasters was covered up, romanticized, or completely rewritten. Royal courts had unlimited power to control their own narratives, even after death. This reveals something fundamental about absolute power. It corrupts not just morally, but physically. When you have unlimited authority, you become untouchable by truth, even medical truth. Elizabeth's physicians knew she was poisoning herself, but none dared tell her to stop. Her courtiers watched her rot alive, but stayed silent to preserve their positions. Her ministers covered up her condition even as it weakened the entire kingdom. Power protected Elizabeth from every consequence except the ones destroying her body. She could execute anyone who displeased her, but she couldn't escape the lead eating through her brain or the mercury destroying her organs. The Virgin Queen died the most alone death imaginable, surrounded by hundreds of courtiers, yet unable to let a single person see her true face. She spent 40 years hiding her humanity behind a mask of toxic paint, and it literally killed her. Her vanity wasn't just personal weakness, it was the inevitable result of absolute power. When you can control everything except your own mortality, you become obsessed with the illusion of perfection. Elizabeth's makeup wasn't just cosmetics. It was the physical manifestation of royal delusion. The most powerful woman in the world rotted from the inside out because she couldn't bear to appear human. This is why the truth about Elizabeth matters more than the legend. The fairy tale version teaches us that power makes people beautiful and strong. The reality shows us that unchecked authority creates monsters who destroy themselves pursuing impossible perfection. Every time you see Elizabeth portrayed as a radiant queen in movies or books, remember what she actually was. A diseased, rotting woman who chose a beautiful lie over an honest life. The crown didn't make her glorious. It made her a prisoner of her own vanity, and that vanity killed her in the most grotesque way imaginable. The real Elizabeth I died as she lived, alone, poisoned, and consumed by the very power that was supposed to make her immortal. Elizabeth Tudor achieved the impossible. She convinced the world she was immortal while slowly rotting to death. The ultimate irony of the Virgin Queen's reign wasn't that she never married or bore children. It was that she became history's most successful liar while destroying herself with her own deception. Elizabeth's greatest victory wasn't defeating the Spanish Armada or establishing England as a world power. Her greatest triumph was dying as one of history's most gruesome medical disasters while maintaining the image of a glorious queen. For 400 years, she fooled everyone. She painted her face with poison and called it beauty. She hid her rotting teeth and claimed perfection. She covered her diseased scalp with wigs and pretended to have glorious hair. She suffered phantom pregnancies and maintained the myth of the Virgin Queen. She died in agony and stench, Yet history remembers her as radiant and powerful. Elizabeth I didn't just rule England. She ruled reality itself. She bent truth to her will so completely that even death couldn't expose her lies. But her story reveals the ultimate cost of absolute power. When you can control everything and everyone around you, you lose the ability to face any truth about yourself. Elizabeth had the power to execute anyone who displeased her, but she was powerless against the poison she applied to her own face every morning. The crown that made her the most powerful woman in the world also made her its most pathetic victim. She died alone, rotting, and terrified that someone might see what she had become. This is the real lesson of the Virgin Queen. Power doesn't corrupt just your soul, it corrupts your body, your mind, and your ability to distinguish between reality and the image you project. Elizabeth chose the lie over the truth, the myth over reality, the crown over her own humanity, and it killed her in the most horrible way imaginable. Elizabeth I guarded these secrets for 4 centuries. I've just handed you 30 minutes of forbidden history that most people will never discover. If you found genuine value in learning these royal lies that I spent weeks researching, then prove it matters to you. Subscribe to Throne of Lies, because if you won't support the channels that risk everything to bring you the truth, who will? And if you're still sitting there without subscribing, at least have the courage to explain yourself in the comments. I read every single response, and I'm genuinely curious. After everything you just learned about deception and lies, what's stopping you from hitting that button? What's your excuse? This is Throne of Lies, where royal mythology dies and historical reality lives. Next week, we're exposing the 6-year-old bride who became a political prisoner, Isabella of Valois, sold into marriage by her own father and destroyed by the men who claimed to protect her. Another royal fairy tale that history got completely wrong. Remember, the truth about power is always more horrifying than the fiction they want you to believe. And the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves about the people who rule over us. Until next time, question everything you think you know about the glorious past. Because behind every crown lies a throne of lies.